Welcome back to Mr. Bing Watch channel. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, stop this video right now and go back. Watch it. Because what you're about to hear in episode 2 will make absolutely no sense without understanding the whispers. Without knowing that something has been communicating with them from inside the walls of Riverside Hardware. Without understanding that Jake and his team have already crossed the threshold into something impossible. This is episode 2. This is where the mystery deepens. This is where they stop questioning whether it's real and start questioning what it wants. And if you're watching this right now, make absolutely sure you're subscribed to this channel. Because episode 3 is coming soon and it will explain everything about the customers. Everything about why they vanish. Everything about what's really happening at Riverside Hardware. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe right now so you get the notification the moment episode 3 drops. Now let me tell you what happened in the weeks after that first discovery. The day after their anniversary celebration, Jake arrived at the store at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before opening. He'd barely slept. His mind had cycled through the footage all night, through that voice saying leave before it's too late, through the implications of what that meant. He unlocked the front door and flipped the light switch, and the store came to life exactly as it always did. Fluorescent lights humming to life. The smell of sawdust and metal and new products. Everything exactly as it should be. But nothing felt normal anymore. Sarah arrived next, carrying 2 coffees from the cafe down the street. She handed one to Jake without speaking. They stood in the back office, looking at the laptop that still sat on the desk from the night before. The closed laptop, the one containing all the evidence of the impossible. "Did you sleep?" Sarah asked. "No," Jake admitted. "You?" "Maybe an hour. I kept thinking about that voice, about what it meant by leave before it's too late. Like there was a deadline, like we're on borrowed time." Jake didn't want to talk about that, didn't want to examine the implications too closely. Instead, he opened the laptop and pulled up the security footage from the current week. Scrolled to clips from the past few days. He was looking for more whispers, looking for anything that would indicate escalation. What he found instead were gaps, not in the recording. The system was functioning properly, but in the actual store footage. Moments where customers would appear in the frame and then, 2 or 3 minutes later, simply not be there anymore. No exit through a door. No footage of them leaving. They just disappeared, like they'd been erased from reality itself. "When did you first notice this?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp. "Just now. I was searching for more audio anomalies, but look at this." Jake pulled up a clip from Tuesday morning. A man in a brown coat had entered the store. Jake recognized him. He was a regular. Came in almost every Saturday and Tuesday for various hardware supplies. The man browsed for about 3 minutes, picked up a box of nails, and then the footage just cut to him not being there anymore. "That's impossible," Sarah said. "Customers don't just vanish." "Apparently they do," Jake said grimly. He pulled up another clip. This time it was a woman who usually came in on Thursdays. Same thing. She was there, browsing near the paint section, and then she was simply gone. "How many times?" Sarah demanded. Jake scrolled through footage, one after another after another. He found 17 instances in just the past week. Customers entering, customers browsing, customers vanishing, and each time there was no explanation. No sign of them leaving, no footage of them exiting the building. The store phone rang, making them both jump. Jake answered it to find Michael on the other end. "Have you seen the cameras?" Michael asked without preamble. "Yeah," Jake said. "I'm looking at them now." "It's the customers," Michael said. "They're disappearing. I was reviewing footage from my shift yesterday, and I noticed customers coming in and then just not being there anymore. I thought I was losing my mind, but then I checked multiple angles and the same thing happens. They vanish on every camera simultaneously. I know, Jake said quietly. Sarah and I just noticed it too. This isn't just a technical glitch anymore, Michael said, and Jake could hear the fear in his voice. This isn't interference or electrical problems. Something is taking customers out of this store without them using any of the exits. I need you to come in early today, Jake said. We need to figure out what's happening, and we need to do it before customers start noticing they're missing.
Michael was there within the hour. David arrived shortly after. Emma came in for her afternoon shift and was brought into the break room immediately. Jake had decided that they all needed to see this. They all needed to understand the scope of what was happening. As they watched the footage together, the reality of the situation became undeniable. These weren't glitches or anomalies. These weren't misreadings of grainy security footage. These were actual customers, people who came into the store regularly, people they recognized, simply ceasing to exist from a physical standpoint while they were inside Riverside hardware. "The man in the brown coat," David said quietly, watching a clip play out for the third time. "That's Tom Henderson. He's been coming to this store since we opened. He's a contractor. He comes in every Saturday and Tuesday without fail." "Has anyone seen him?" Jake asked. Nobody answered, because they all knew the answer. Nobody had seen Tom Henderson in at least a week. Nobody had noticed because his disappearances had been so seamless, so complete, that it was like he'd never existed at all. "So what?" Emma said, her voice shaking. "Customers are just vanishing into thin air? How is that possible?" "It's not," Sarah said flatly, "but it's happening. So we need to accept that the rules we thought governed reality don't apply here." Over the next 3 days, Jake and his team maintained the store's normal operations while secretly documenting the disappearances. They watched as customers entered, browsed, and then vanished. They tracked how long each person lasted, usually between 2 and 5 minutes before disappearing completely. They noted that the disappearances always happened when the customer was alone in a particular section of the store, never when they were at the checkout counter, never when an employee was directly interacting with them. It was as if the store itself was selective about when and where it took people. On Thursday, Sarah pulled Jake aside during a quiet moment. "I've been thinking about this," she said quietly. "About the pattern. All the people who've disappeared. They're regulars. People who've come to this store multiple times. Tom Henderson, Mrs. Chen, the Robbins twins, Marcus Gray. These aren't random customers. These are people who know the store, people who have a connection to this place." "What are you saying?" Jake asked, though he already knew where she was going. "I'm saying the store remembers them," Sarah said. "I'm saying it's choosing specific people, and I think it's collecting them." Jake wanted to dismiss this as speculation, wanted to find a more rational explanation, but he couldn't, because Sarah was right. The disappearances weren't random. They were targeted. They were deliberate. That evening, as they were preparing to close, a man entered the store that none of them had ever seen before. He was tall, probably in his 60s, with gray hair and clothes that looked expensive and out of place in a hardware store. He wore a long, dark coat despite the relatively warm evening temperature. He didn't browse. He didn't look at merchandise. He simply walked directly to the back office where Jake was completing paperwork. "Mr. Martinez," the man said, and his voice carried an accent Jake couldn't quite place. "My name is Dr. Reeves. I've been waiting to meet you." "Can I help you?" Jake asked, his hand instinctively tensioning. There was something about this man that set off every alarm bell in his head. "You can," Dr. Reeves said calmly. "You can answer some questions about what's been happening in this store, about the disappearances, about the whispers, about why your predecessors all failed where you're still struggling." Jake's blood ran cold. "How do you know about any of that?" "Because I've been here before," Dr. Reeves said, "watching, waiting, observing how different people respond to being inside this building, observing how long they last before they understand what's happening." "Who are you?" Jake demanded. "I told you, my name is Dr. Reeves, and I've been the study director for the experiment that's been running in this building for the past 43 years, long before your hardware store, long before the antique shop before it, long before the medical clinic that came before that. This building has been used for research for a very long time, Mr. Martinez, and you and your team are simply the latest subjects." "This is insane," Jake said, backing toward the office door. "Get out of my store." I'm afraid I can't do that, Dr. Reeves said, and his smile was terrible. You see, you've already been marked. Your entire team has. The whispers were the marking. The customers disappearing were the observation phase. And now comes the final phase. What final phase? Jake demanded. But even as he spoke, he noticed something. Dr. Reeves was becoming translucent, becoming less solid. His form was flickering like he was experiencing interference. The phase where we take the employees, Dr. Reeves said, and his voice was becoming distorted, breaking apart like the audio feed was degrading. The phase where we remove all the consciousness that was supposed to leave, the phase where we... But he didn't finish the sentence, because Dr. Reeves simply ceased to exist. One moment he was standing in the office, and the next he was gone, completely gone. No sound, no flash of light, no exit through a door. He simply wasn't anymore. Jake stood frozen in the office, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. He could hear footsteps running down the hallway. Sarah appeared in the doorway, followed by Michael and David and Emma. "Tell me you got that on camera," Sarah said. Jake pushed past them and ran to the main floor monitor. He pulled up the security feeds, rewound to the moment Dr. Reeves had entered the store. And there, on all 4 camera angles, was video evidence of exactly what he'd just witnessed. A man in a dark coat, entering the store, walking directly to the back office, vanishing while inside that office. But there was something else. In the final moment before Dr. Reeves disappeared, his mouth had moved. He'd been saying something. The audio feed was garbled and distorted, but Jake could see his lips moving. "Can you slow down the audio?" Michael asked, reading Jake's mind. Jake adjusted the playback speed. He turned up the volume, and as they watched, frozen in place, they heard Dr. Reeves's final words, distorted, fragmented, but unmistakable. "The building remembers everyone who enters. The building takes what it wants, and the building has marked you as its own. You will not leave. Your customers will not leave. Nobody leaves Riverside Hardware. The building hungers, and you are its feast." The video cut to black. The 5 employees stood in the office in absolute silence. The store's fluorescent lights hummed around them. The security system continued to record, and somewhere in the walls, in the shadows, in the spaces between moments, something that had been waiting for decades was finally getting what it wanted. "We have to leave," Emma said, her voice tiny and terrified. "We have to get out of this building right now." "No," David said quietly. "He said we can't leave. He said the building won't let us, and I think he was telling the truth." "Then what do we do?" Sarah asked, looking at Jake. Jake didn't have an answer. He looked at his team, at these people he'd hired and trained and who'd trusted him to keep them safe. He looked at the security monitor showing the empty store, the empty space where Dr. Reeves had been moments before, the empty space where 17 customers had disappeared over the past week. "We stay," Jake said finally. "We stay, and we document everything. We stay, and we try to understand what this building is. We stay, and we find out what it wants from us." "And if it wants to take us like it took the customers?" Emma asked. "Like it took Dr. Reeves?" "Then at least someone will know what happened," Jake said. "At least there will be video evidence. At least the truth will exist somewhere in the world, even if we don't." Over the following days, more disappearances occurred, but now Jake's team wasn't just watching them. They were cataloging them, documenting them, trying to find patterns in the madness. They discovered that customers who entered the store with a specific intention, looking for something they needed, seemed to disappear faster than customers who were just browsing. They discovered that the disappearances always happened in a specific section of the store, the back left corner, the same section where the building's history seemed to concentrate itself. And they discovered something else, something that made Jake's blood run even colder than before. When they slowed down the final moments before each customer disappeared, they could see movement, shadows, things that shouldn't be there, things that seemed to be reaching toward the customers as they faded from existence. The building wasn't just taking them, it was taking them with purpose. It was collecting them, it was feeding on them. And with each new disappearance, the whispers in the walls got a little bit louder, a little bit clearer, a little bit closer to forming actual words. On Friday evening, Jake found a note on his desk. It hadn't been there an hour earlier. He was certain of it, but now it sat in the middle of his workspace, written in handwriting that looked old and fragile, like it had been written decades ago. The note contained only 5 words. You cannot leave Riverside Hardware. Jake sat back in his chair, the note trembling in his hands. He looked out at the empty store, at the security monitors showing nothing but empty aisles and fluorescent light, at the building that had become their prison. He thought about Tom Henderson and Mrs. Chen and the Robbins twins and all the other customers who'd disappeared. He thought about the businesses that had come before them and failed. He thought about the 43 years of experimentation that Dr. Reeves had mentioned, and he understood. He finally understood what was happening at Riverside Hardware. This wasn't a curse. This wasn't a haunting in the traditional sense. This was something far worse. This was a trap. This was a machine designed to lure people in and take them and add them to something that had been building for decades. They were never leaving this store, and neither would anyone who came through those doors. But what happens next? What is the building really doing with the people it takes? What is Dr. Reeves and who or what is he really working for? These questions will be answered in episode 3, and to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell so that the moment episode 3 is published, you'll know. Because the mystery of Riverside Hardware is about to get a lot deeper. The truth about what this building really is will finally start to emerge. Like this video, comment below, and tell me what you think the building is doing with the disappeared customers. Tell me if you think Jake and his team will survive. Tell me if you'd go into Riverside Hardware if you knew the truth. And please, whatever you do not forget to subscribe, because episode 3 will change everything about how you understand what's happening in that store. This is Mr. Bing Watch Channel. The story continues.